Hi everyone, welcome back to my top 500 games. We are currently at number 214 and that is Oddworld Abe's Odyssey. Now, the story behind how I found out about this game is through my friend Matthew. He did introduce me to quite a few games, but the story behind this one is quite interesting because what would usually happen is he'd come over, he'd bring a game and he'd show me it and I'd be interested and I'd want to get the game after he showed me it. And what happened this time was I was playing a different game and he brought it over and he showed me it and then he left and he forgot to take it with him. So he had to later come back to pick it up. Now he left. Now this is me being rather insidious I suppose, but he forgot to take it home and so what I ended up doing was just not saying anything. I just pretended that I didn't notice. He left, I pretended that he didn't notice and I was thinking I'll wait a few minutes. I'll wait a while so that he's got a chance to come back to see if he remembers, and if he didn't, I'd play it throughout the night. He did remember eventually and he came back to pick it up within about 10 minutes or so. So I was there sort of disappointed that he remembered to take it home. That is probably the most insidious I've ever been when it comes to games and stuff. Like I've never like stolen anything from anyone. I couldn't have it in me to do that. I'd feel too guilty. But I did kind of think to myself, you know, let's just sit here and pretend I haven't noticed anything and let's just hope that he doesn't remember. So yeah, but he showed me this game and I wanted it of course. But basically what stood out to me about this game, and I think stands out to a lot of people, is just how creepy this is. The idea is that you are Abe, you are one of these particular type of species, and this species that they are they Medokans? I think that's the word, I'm not entirely sure. I know there's the good guys, these characters who are the slaves, who I think are the Medokans. You are one of them and you have to escape from this factory because not only are you being treated as slaves, but you found out that the bad guys, these executive businessmen who have no arms, they want to use these Medokans. I'm going to look like a fool if I'm getting my terminology mixed up here, but they want to take these Medokans and use them to make food out of them. And so Abe saw this in one of their meetings and he was terrified. So his goal is to escape and to free all of the other Medokans. And so it's kind of like this 2D, I'm not going to say platform game because even though there is running and jumping and all that sort of stuff, it's very stiff controls. It's mostly about using the environment as a sort of puzzle element. You have to find a way to be sneaky. You have to sneak around and you can tell the other Medokans to go and follow you so that you can save them. And you've also got these bad guys who run around and they can shoot you. You can also take control over the bad guys by chanting, and when you do chant you'll make this yo 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 sound and you'll be able to take control of them, which is pretty interesting. That really stuck with me. That was something that I really noticed, but also I didn't actually realise that you could do that the first time I played it. I just took control of them and then kept the button held down and they just exploded, and I just thought that was how you defeated them. I didn't know you could control them, but it was very interesting when I found out that you could control them. And so when you do control them, you can, you know, just make them walk back and forth, disguise yourself as one of them because you are controlling them, and you can shoot the other bad guys controlling this bad guy. Sometimes you'd have these machineries that would zap you if you tried chanting, and you'd always have these bits of machinery around. Some of them were deadly and you had to try to find a way to get past them or to turn them off. It was very environmental and very puzzle based. I remember I did manage to escape from the vicinity of this factory, and I remember trying to escape from the outer area, and along that path you'd also get these laser beams that would kill you if it detected movement, so you had to sort of stand still as you were travelling through these. And I did get a bit further than that, but I also remember I did get stuck at one point inside the factory. This was one time where I was playing it at my dad's house. This was, well, my dad has had another 2 houses since between this event and me recording this. So it wasn't the previous house, but the house before that. I was over there and they had a PlayStation there and I played this game and I got stuck at one point where there was just this weird laser. And I remember one of my dad's friends was round because he was trying to work on something, and I asked him because apparently he knew a lot about games and he said he didn't know. That memory sticks in my mind for some reason. But I also got to one point where you've got a choice between two different levels to go to, two different areas. So there's sort of like the one that's based off one type of creature and it's all like jungly, and there's this other one that's based on this other type of creature which it's all red and stuff. And I remember I got stuck in both of them. I tried both of them. One of them just led me to a point where I got to a Madokan that would just stand on the edge and he'd just say stuff and I didn't know what to do. I think I had to copy him, but at the time I didn't know what to do. And the other way, just the enemies were just too hard. I just died all the time. So there's a nice interesting story there. Oh, and yes, I did eventually get this game for myself. I got it copied from my granddad because my granddad always copied games for me for my PlayStation. Number 213 is Pinball FX. I'm not going to have much to say about this game because it's a pinball game and I've spoken about a few pinball games already. All I'm going to say is that the main thing that stuck out to me about this game in particular was that it was online. You could compete with friends on your Xbox Live account, which is what I did. And so you'd have these 4 different tables, as they always come with 4 tables. Why is it always 4 tables for each of these pinball games? Is there some sort of common wisdom going on there with pinball games as to why it's always 4? I really don't know. But yeah, I did have fun with this game. None of them really stand out to me, but I remember there was one particular table which was set in this really small area. At the bottom was like this sports themed one where it was all about skateboard ramps and stuff. And the main area for the level was really, really small. Because usually on pinball tables you've got all these ramps everywhere, but on this one you had a little area at the bottom which was the main bit, and then you had a top separate area which is something that you went to if you like went up a ramp and then round into this extra area. But it took up so much of the table itself. Really though, I don't think I have much to say about this, so I'm just going to quickly move on. Number 212 is Sports Champions. Now, this is a PS3 game that uses the PS Move. Now, I actually got a PS Move because my original PS3 was one of the original European 60GB ones with the backwards compatibility. It didn't have the hardware compatibility like the American ones did. It had the software compatibility, but it was on its way out. It made lots of loud noises. It would always take ages to load, and so I ended up getting a new PS3, and the PS3 that I got, and this would have been, I believe, 2013, because it was about the summer of 2013, and with it I got the PlayStation Move bundle. Now, Sports Champions didn't come bundled with the system itself, but I did get Sports Champions because I thought, hey, I've got a PS Move, I'm going to try and get one of these PS Move games, and so I got Sports Champions. This was a game that was very heavily marketed for when the PS Move was a big thing. You know, back in like 2010 when E3 was all about motion controls and stuff, everyone trying to catch up with Nintendo. But I actually do think that the PS Move was a good piece of hardware. I honestly do. And Sports Champions, which was basically the idea, was that it was an upgraded version of Wii Sports, the Sony version, and let me tell you, it absolutely is. Because while Wii Sports has that very casual appeal, and don't get me wrong, this game also has a very casual appeal, but it also does have very precise controls, and it's very nice, it's very smooth. And I know motion controls kind of went into this crazy direction where the Xbox One, and you know, the Kinect thing, like everyone knows how badly that went, but at the same time, this particular game was good. You had all these different sporting events that you could take part in, and you worked your way through the different cups. So you'd have the Bronze Cup, and then the Silver Cup, and then the Gold Cup, and then you have the Championship Cup, where you go through progressively more difficult stages. Now, in the case of, for example, table tennis, it just meant that your opponent got better at the game. So I did actually get to the final stages of table tennis, but it just got too hard. It just got very hard. Sometimes you get to the point where you have someone who knocks the ball so very slightly, so you have to like really like lean forward, you know, to like tap the ball over to the other side. And other times they'd do this massive spin attack, so they would spin round and bounce off at really strange angles. I did get good at it, but those particular stages are just really hard. I think there's a few that I still have left to do that I just can't do because they're just so hard and they just take ages. And also, when you get to like the end stages of those as well, you end up having to reach so many different like high goals. So it would be something like, in order to win a round, it's best of 9 or first to 9, and then it's the first person to win 5 rounds. So you couldn't just keep like starting, restarting, starting, restarting over and over again, because you had to win this huge game that just took ages, and each stage, each individual game rather, had a particular character that was good at that game. So you had to kind of work out who it was and select that character to help you out. And you also unlocked different characters the more that you went on and the more that you got to these later stages. So for example, with the table tennis, which was one of my favourites, you unlocked this robot. But also for the archery, which I think is my other favourite, you unlocked this Grim Reaper character. It's very strange how they go from, you know, people around the world trying to compete in these sporting events to robots and Grim Reapers and all that type of stuff. I think it's interesting. I like it when games do that, I really do. But the archery, for example, the challenges would change up. So you would have ones where like fruit is popping up and you have to get as much point as you can, and of course the smaller fruits will give you more points, and on the earlier difficulties you'll be able to see like this guiding line as to where gravity will take its effect on the arrow, but it won't always show that in the later stages, so it just gets really difficult. And on the championship stage, one of the stages that you have to beat, and I remember this because I could never do this, you have one game where you have no guiding line of sight, you have something like 6 arrows total in order to score as many points as possible, and all of the targets were on this windmill that was spinning around with these small targets that was behind a separate windmill that was spinning in the opposite direction, and it would take me so long to be able to like try to aim and time my shots that my opponent had already finished smashing all of his targets. He'd start smashing all of mine and he'd be stealing my points from my windmill thing. I think that's really funny, that, you know, the whole idea of, you know, your enemy here is so good that once they're finished completing their challenge, they're completing your challenge after that. I think that's quite funny, but it was so hard. Number 211 is Toe Jam and Earl. I don't have too much to say about this game, but I will say what it is. It's basically kind of like, although not necessarily, it depends how you look at it, it's kind of like a roguelike on the Mega Drive, apart from you don't have a leveling system, you don't have food or anything like that. You just got to progress from all these different randomly generated floors, although there are different modes, so you can play as one where the floors aren't randomly generated if you so desire. But the way that it works is that you are trying to travel along this map because you are Toe Jam or Earl and you've crashed on planet Earth, and you have to find all of your funky parts for your ship so that you can go back to the planet Funkatron. It's very 90s. But what I find very interesting about this game is the things that you find, such as you'll of course have different things to stop you. You'll have different enemies that take on a variety of different forms, and for example you might come across a wizard, or you might come across like this horde of people just rampaging through the desert or whatever. But you also find these presents scattered around which are kind of like your items, and they will do different things. But what's interesting is that each present shape that you find has the same item as any other present that is that same present icon, but what it actually is randomized. So it might be something in one playthrough, it'll be something different in another playthrough, so you have to play the game and use them to find out. But sometimes you'll use them, not know what it is, and then it could be something bad. It could be like you've caused a thunderstorm above your head. It's a rather wacky game, but to be honest, I'd never played this game back on the Mega Drive. I'd never played it on any Mega Drive collections or anything like that. I first heard about this game through James and Mike Plays, you know, the angry video game nerd thing, where it's James Rolfe and Mike Ritter, and on Mondays they'll play through a game. And I saw the video of Toe Jam and Earl, and I thought, I want to play that game. And so I did, and I'm glad I did, because it's interesting. Number 210 is Bejeweled 3. You may be noticing that I put this game leaps and bounds ahead Bejeweled 2, and the main reason is because they've added so much stuff since Bejeweled 2. It's the same core concept behind it. You're still matching gems to be able to make them disappear and stuff, but you still have these extra modes, and I really like the extra modes. I think it's interesting, especially the quest mode. And you know, I always like the single player campaigns where you progress through a set of levels and get unlocks or level up stats and stuff. That's the stuff that I like the most, and so that's what this game had. You didn't just have the action mode where you had to be fast, or the free mode where you had to just keep playing forever, and then the classic mode where you just had to make sure that there was always something for you to match. Those were still there, but the quest mode had a variety of different games in it, and I loved it. I loved the different variety that you could get within these games. I'll give you some examples. I'll give you an example of one of the boring ones, I suppose. One of the ones is buried treasure, so you have to match gems and they will uncover the treasure behind it, and so once you've done that on enough spaces you'll uncover all the treasures and win the round. There's also the digging one, which I didn't really like so much, which is where you have to match them next to these rocks in order to knock the rocks so that you can crumble through them and get to the gold layer at the bottom. That was pretty difficult. You had the alchemy one, where if you matched gems then the line that those gems were on was filled out and you have to fill out the whole grid. And there was also ones where you had to balance between the amount of red gems and the amount of blue gems, because every time you matched either reds or blues they would turn into a liquid and they would fall into this weight, and so the weights were on other sides and they would kind of counterbalance each other, so you had to get as much red and blue as you can, but also try to balance it out so that you wouldn't cause the weight to fall too far down one side. I just liked all these extra challenges and stuff, and I think that's what these types of games really need, is you've got a core concept, you match gems, that's fine. But if you can add all of these layers where you've got different ideas and different modes behind it all, and so that you can unlock different things, I think that is when these games truly shine the most. Number 209 is Lemmings Touch. This is a PS Vita game and it uses the touchscreen. Now, you might be thinking, hey, that makes sense that, you're pressing the buttons with your finger on a touchscreen. It's traditionally a mouse game that you would use with a mouse. Not as easy with a controller given the nature of the game, so it would work with a touchpad, and that's absolutely right. It is nice, but there's a problem, and the problem is that it's not always incredibly responsive. Thankfully, you can press one of the shoulder buttons to pause the game, and if it wasn't for this, I'd have to rank this game a lot lower, because let me tell you, that pause button, very nice. It really, really helps. You could say it works against the real-time nature of it, in that you have to sort of keep checking and acting fast and stuff, but given the nature of a touchscreen, it's just a lot better that you can pause the game and select things individually through that. Of course, the problem is when lemmings are all huddled together, it's very hard to tap on the screen at the very specific correct lemming, and also it can be very difficult to make sure that your taps register correctly. But also what this game does, which I think you should be able to change because this has caused me problems, is that instead of doing what Lemmings usually does, where you have the roll option selected at the bottom of the screen and then you click on the lemming and then the lemming will do their thing, you have to click on the lemming first and then choose from a list of options from that, and I think that makes it harder. I think it would make sense if you could switch between those two different modes. I really think that would help it. I've already explained what Lemmings is, but I'll just quickly go over the core concepts of Lemmings again. You have a bunch of lemmings that will fall out of the starting area and they'll just continuously walk forward, and you have to get as many as you can to the end zone, the home zone, and the way that you do that is by assigning them different roles. So you might make one a digger, or you might make one build a bridge over the certain chasm or something, and you have to save as many as you can. Also, with this game having a touch screen, you do have other things that you have to operate with a touch screen. Like you might have platforms that you can manually move around, and you might have trampolines that you can aim and stuff, which is kind of silly, but it's okay, and I like this game. And I'm actually going to end this part right here. So I thank you all for listening and watching. I will see you next time. We'll continue on with number 208. So I will see you all then.